All right, hello everyone, and welcome to Core Live. I'm Tobbs, aka Tasha, and today I am so excited to have Lana Lux joining us. Lana is a game dev extraordinaire, a wonderful streamer, and today she has deigned us with her presence. Thank you, Lana, for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Tasha.
Oh, of course. So today we're just going to be talking about Lana's journey in game dev and kind of what game she's playing, what inspires her, best practices for game dev, all that fun stuff. You guys feel free to ask questions in chat. No guarantee we'll ask them. It's not an AMA, but I just thought it'd be fun to learn a little bit more about your process, Lana. So first off, big question. How did you get started in game development?
Okay, so how did I get started in game development? It took a while for me to realize how passionate I was about game development. I kind of did some soul searching. I started doing things that whenever somebody was like, "It will change your life," I
Ooh.
thought, "Yeah, yeah, like what? In what way?" They're like, "Oh, it's just amazing." I'm like, "Okay, let me try it." So, like, I got a motorcycle. I tried a sensor deprivation tank. Um, I went to Burning Man. I traveled. I did self-improvement courses, all these different things. And after a while of trying different things and going on this journey, I realized that what I really enjoy doing is creating. And communicating with people through art and experience was just seemed like the coolest creation and form of communication that you could do. So I was really
Oh,
yeah, taken by it.
that is so cool. Wow. So I love that you had this whole like self exploration phase. So you said motorcycle, sensory
Yep.
deprivation tank. Okay, cool. And you traveled. Any fun places that you traveled to? Favorites?
Well, I lived in England for a few years. That was really cool. I don't know, when I travel, I like to get an idea of what it's like to live in that place. So anything where you
Uh,
can connect with people who live there, get an authentic experience, it's definitely my favorite kind of traveling.
that is, I love that. And I think that's probably the best like origin story I've heard for game dev. That is really
Yeah.
cool. So, what engines and languages do you prefer?
Uh, I so my background is in web development, graphic design, app design, user experience design. And as I was doing these things for my job, making apps, making websites, I started to get into game development a little bit. And I tried to take the path of least resistance. So I started making games I started actually in Flash, and JavaScript was my
Oh
first
my
language.
gosh. Oh, nice.
I played with Flash. I tried RPG Maker. I made a puzzle game and some character creators in JavaScript later on and ported them to um, the App Store, to Google Play. And honestly, I realized that what I really love doing is 3D. I love the idea
Ooh.
of being immersed in a world. So I eventually found Unity and was like, okay, this is a little different, but honestly, it was not that hard to learn. And I started getting into it more and more. And now that you guys have introduced me to Core, I have really enjoyed that as well. It's an even like lower entry level to start building things. So I'm really enjoying those. I
Ah,
haven't tried anything outside of those though.
I'm like totally impressed that off the bat you were like, oh, I really like 3D and I'm going to do that because I feel like speaking of someone who has tried to do 3D without core, I was like, this isn't it. This is not for me. It's just so much more to worry about, but you immediately jumped into it. That's so cool. So I feel like everyone who comes into game development has most likely plays a lot of games. Any favorites or inspirations of yours?
Um, my favorite game is a series, which is Mass
Ooh.
Effect. I
Oh,
love it because I think that they did a really good job with making the characters interesting, making the story interesting. Um, the visuals were really impressive. Uh, and like, I don't know, they made the action really fun. The enemies were fun. Another favorite is an old game that not that many people played called Vampire. And when I replay it, I'm always like, I can't believe like what they were able to achieve with the graphic fidelity that they had at the time.
Whoa.
They have these characters with really great voice acting, and it's all very, how do I put it? Kind of, it's like a little risque in some parts. They have this
Ew.
late night talk show host, and she's talking on the radio, and people call in, and there's all these little like Easter eggs throughout the game that just make it really fun. So those two really inspired me a lot.
Oh, awesome. Actually, I think we have a few people at Core who've worked on Mass Effect, which is really cool. Of like when things
That's
come,
cool.
yeah, full circle like that. So let's see. Do the games you end up making, are they games, I'm guessing because you mostly solo dev thing, they're games you'd like to play, which isn't always the case.
Sorry, can you ask that again?
Oh, yeah. So do you find that the games you end up creating are games that you would really want to play? Or I guess I'm asking because normally when you're working on a team or a company, you a lot of the times aren't really making something that you yourself would play.
Yeah. No, that was another thing when I switched to 3D. I guess I was making these 2D games. Some of them were more for kids, or some of them I realized that they weren't games I wanted to play. And I started thinking, I should be playing games that I'm excited about to play, not just to make, because then I can be a better judge of whether or not it's going in the right path. And I think making games that you want to play just makes it so much more fun and interesting, because if there's a game out there that you want to play that already exists, you'll play the game. But if there's not, then you know you're adding something new to the table.
Yeah, so why don't we talk about some of the games you've worked on? So, of course, we have the one you're working on now, Strain. And did you want to give us a little rundown of, or a game loop, or what that is all about?
Sure. So it's a narrative survival game. It takes place in an apocalyptic city during a pandemic. So it was inspired by current day events. Current day events, but it's gone more wild. It's sort of Mad Maxy style environment, and you have to survive paying attention to stats such as your hunger, your thirst, as well as your hygiene, your immune system, and your sanity. And then you have to navigate this apocalyptic world where people are forming factions and alliances, and you have to decide who you help and who you don't help, and that kind of thing.
That sounds really fun. So, and then your other game, Don't Notice Me, on Project Aeroid says, don't forget about the emoji.
Oh, TP is currency. Toilet paper is currency.
Yes. Okay.
As it was so hard to come by at the beginning of this pandemic.
You know, we also have a few toilet paper related games on Core inspired by the pandemic. And I went back and I'm rewatching The Walking Dead. And in the very first episode, they have a pile of toilet paper in the house that they're staying in. And I was like, dang, this is like a thing people do then. The end of society. So I love that. That is the currency.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So they predicted the mass toilet paper outage.
Yeah, they had this huge pile in a corner, and I was like, I never would have noticed that until now.
That's so funny.
Yeah. So you, I feel, just jumped head first into game design. You're like, yep, I'm doing it. I'm doing 3D. I'm learning Unity. Do you have any advice for aspiring game devs? Because I think, and speaking from a personal experience, it's definitely very intimidating to know where to even begin.
Yes, I was going to say my advice is not to be intimidated. It may seem like a lot, and especially if you come by my stream, you'll see me working all day, every day for months and months on the same project. But you don't have to get that complex, especially right off the bat. I think starting small and honestly digging in, doing a few tutorials, dedicating a weekend to it, dedicating a few evenings to it, and then trying to make something with the tools that you learn, just something small and completing it. You might be surprised how much fun you have in that process, and then just slowly learning more and increasing the complexity or the scope of your mini projects until it gets to the level that maybe you is your dream project, your ultimate big dream project, if you get to that point.
Dang. Okay. I love that. I think keeping the scope small on a project is super important. We have a lot of people who like roll into our Discord server and they're like, I want to make an open world like MMO. And I'm like,
with core, it's actually a lot easier to do than traditionally. So there's that.
I'm always like, dang, that's a lot of work, truly. And actually, so I was the same way. I was starting out learning programming. So I started out learning Lua when I was an intern at Manticore. And
Nice.
I had a huge project I wanted to do. And I was like, this is like really far more complicated than I thought it was. And it ended up being my first project was just turning on and off a light in a room, which was like...
Yes. That was the tutorial, right?
Yeah. That's what inspired the tutorial.
Yeah. It was exciting, though. I was excited to learn how to do that, too.
Yeah. So even though it was like far, far dumbed down from my original plan, when I finally got the light to turn on, I was like, had this huge dopamine rush, and I was like, I'm good, baby. But
amazing.
Yeah. Programming is far more creative than I actually thought it would be. And then the art for games is far more technical than I thought it would be. But
that's a good point.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. So what's your creation process like? So you kind of do everything, which is amazing. You're doing the art, you're doing the programming. Where do you begin for a project?
Where do I begin? I guess by writing down a game design document, starting the plan, and trying to figure out exactly what in software it would be called the MVP, the minimum viable product. So the first, the most basic version of what you're trying to make, figure out what that is, and then add to that, start testing, adding to it. But I like the term in game development, the MLP, the minimum lovable product, because it's a little bit different. Yeah. So I try to come up with that. I try to figure out what do I need to do with this project to put it in front of somebody and get an idea of how much more is needed, whether it's even interesting to people in the first place, what direction to take it next. I think this comes a little bit from my user experience background, where that was very much our process with software. You put it in front of people. Does it make sense? What can we do better? How can we slowly add more to it? Making sure that it's really solid each step of the way. So I think that's a great way to approach it as well with games.
I like that. And it's definitely very important to kind of check in with your progress overall and make sure you're headed in the right direction, or your game is fun to play, which sometimes I've heard doesn't really happen until the final moments of a project. We do have a question from chat that I would like to ask you. Lil Sarah Lee says, a friend of mine is working on a game for over a year now. Any advice for how I could encourage other people to get involved and help them out?
First of all, is the friend wanting help? And if so, I would say the best thing to do is to show people what you're capable of. Let people believe in you. If they participate in a game jam and they make just a small project, that is a testament that they are able to complete a project, however simple or whatever kind of project it might be over 2 days. It still shows that they are able to complete a project, and that speaks volumes to people, especially when there's a mass amount of people starting projects and then there's very high rate of unfinished games. If you can show that you're able to finish, that's already a very attractive quality to somebody that you might want to join. Another thing is to show them what the game help them envision what you envision, because you might have this amazing game in mind, but right now it's just blocks. So if you can either put together a vertical slice or some concept art or something that they can get on board with that vision, I think that would be helpful to inspire them. And yeah, I think those things would help.
Yeah. Oh, that's very well said. Yeah, I think I'll take another question from chat. So, Project Aroid asks, "What's your favorite part of the solo game development process?"
Well, my favorite part of any process is watching people play it and enjoy the game. That's the best part.
Oh, I love
It's like the
that.
payoff.
Yes.
But I feel like that's a cheat of an answer. Okay, so I'll give like a more. Um, I think my favorite part is adding polish. With Don't Notice Me, for example, adding the voices in took the game from this sort of mixing different forms of art together into this interactive software, and then adding the voice acting in made it feel like a story and an actual narrative, and that like it brought it to life. And that adding those type of details, the sound design and the polish on the art and those little details just takes it from like this whatever thing to an actual game, and it's really exciting. So I really love that part.
I completely agree with that, by the way. I'm not a solo dev, but basically at any point in a project where it's like the last like 10% of it or so is just adding all of those little details that some people won't even notice, but just like make it come together and like bring it to life. I'm like, such a good feeling. And I am showing off the webpage for Don't Notice Me right now. So if you guys are unfamiliar with Lana Lux, here it is. Oh, really beautiful. Still can't
Thank
believe
you.
you do everything. This is insane.
I didn't do the voice acting and I didn't do
Hmm.
the music.
Oh,
The rest,
very hard. I would
lots of work.
love to see a game where it's one voice actor for the whole thing. And that actually would be a really good portfolio piece for someone.
That would be very interesting.
Yes. And then Eris GG asks, "Do you add Easter eggs in your games?"
Yes, I think Easter eggs are so fun. Not a big one yet, but one thing I've been doing is when I'm doing the packaging design. So in the game in Strain, uh, there's a lot of items that spawn in the world because it's a survival game. You need to find food, you need to find water, you need to find different products, and for the products to look real and interesting, I've been doing packaging design.
My gosh.
But I've been putting chat
Yeah.
members' names on the packages. So, for example, the water is Argo, which is one of our community members, or Project Arrow
Oh,
is in it. Except he's Project Beans. He's on a can of beans.
that is
So everyone's
so
different products
cool.
throughout the game. Yeah. Well,
So,
not everybody. Gotta get everyone in though.
talking more about your experiences on Twitch, it sounds like you've like built up this incredibly like wonderfully wholesome community. How was it starting out and growing? How did you keep it wholesome? How did you?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. How is it? It's interesting you ask how it was starting off. For a long time, there was like 4 to 6 people hanging out regularly, and that was for months, maybe even a year. And those people are still around, and they are such amazing people. Um, they came by and we hung out, and it felt like I don't know what they look like. I didn't know their names. I didn't know much about them, but we could just hang out and talk about game development, and just doing that was so fun. And I think when people came with that same attitude, we all accepted them into this sort of online friendship circle, and it just kept growing. And I think people who have the same ideas that they want to create something, they're driven, they're interested, they're polite to each other, those type of people, I think when they find others like that, it becomes apparent. Um, and I think that's why people stick around. It's hard to speak on behalf of others, but I mean, you treat people how you would like to be treated if you were going to join a community or introduce yourself to somebody. I know I'm pretty shy when I go into Twitch streams. I almost never chat. So when I like
A
go in and go,
lurker.
"Hi." I'm like really nervous, and if somebody's replies with, "Oh, hello, like how are you?" and they start a conversation, then I think that just that alone can, give an idea of what the community is about.
Okay. I love that. And it seems like, I mean, you have your followers in here. You brought them over to Core Live. Seems like they're very adoring. Thank you for rating us, by the way.
You're welcome.
I shared this with Lana earlier, but she was the first one to ever raid Core Live, and it like blew my mind because raids were theoretical at that point. And then when I saw it was happening, first I thought they were something bad, but after doing research, I was like, okay, they're cool, and I want it to happen to us.
Oh no, don't raid us.
Yeah, I was like, a raid, what's that? I almost disabled them for our channel at first because I actually didn't have any experience with Twitch before I started. I basically volunteered, and it's been a whirlwind since, but I'm always curious to learn more about how other people handle their streams and streaming. Okay, so can you confirm or deny if this is the correct way to handle trolls? Just ignore them.
Yes and no. I would say it depends on the situation. Sometimes, honestly, when I first started off, I would just ban them and I would try to ignore them. But especially when I was first starting off, the things that they would say would affect me. And I would just ban them. This is mean things, I'd just put it out of my sight. And then, but it's not like it didn't, like I didn't, it sat with me. I was really bad at not letting it get to me at the beginning. So I think in that case, it's maybe good to just block and not bring it up if you're not ready to talk about it. But the more I saw it, the more I realized that it's just, I don't know. It didn't affect me as much because you see it more and more and you get really desensitized to it. And I
For
think
better,
that
for worse.
for better.
Okay,
Because
good.
now I can address it and call people out, especially if they're saying things that are kind of passive aggressive or not overtly offensive. I can actually ask them and address the topic so that, because most people see things like that, like you try to ban people, but everyone's seen the message. It's already out in the open. And to just let it go is almost like, it depends if it's just people coming in trying to be mean and rude, like there's not really anything to say, like, don't be mean. Do you think that's nice? No? Well, then why are you doing it? But if they're bringing up a topic that you can actually address and clarify, or ask them, point out that this is not acceptable behavior, then it might not teach that particular person, but I think it does explain to people why it's not cool to do that. So I think that is the better option if it's possible without being distracted from what you're trying to do.
Okay. And then, so was there a point in what you noticed in like your streaming journey that you kind of took off, or was it more like a linear growth for you of just putting in the work?
After I finished Don't Notice Me and put it out, I was lucky enough that a few content creators played it out and played it and put their videos out. And those got a lot of really great feedback. There was a lot of fun comments. There was a lot of views. And having the game live and people playing it kind of inspired me to keep going with this and to stream more and I guess take it a little more seriously and just really keep going with it. And after that game came out, things started growing a lot faster.
Wow. And so you stream full time now.
Mhm.
Did you quit like a full-time job to stream?
Yes.
Whoa, how
Well,
was
I
that
quit
like?
my full-time job. Quit my full-time job to do game development. I had started streaming. I had tried it, and that was more of a way for me to be part of a community or connect with people while I'm doing this very independent activity and putting a lot of hours into it. So I had been saving my money for a long time, working hard, saving money, and eventually, like when I started getting into game development, and I was trying to balance like doing work and then on weekends, I was trying to balance like a social life, a 9 to 5, and then starting to learn development,
Oh my
Unity,
gosh.
and I realized that this was just I wasn't getting enough of any of them. It was like too many. What's the expression? Hands in too many.
Too many cooks in the
I don't know.
kitchen? I know what
We
you're
don't need an
saying.
expert.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying.
Too much going
So,
on.
yeah, too much going on. So I thought that instead of the money I saved, instead of investing in, you know, whatever people invest in, I thought,
Yeah.
I'm going to invest in myself and learning something
Oh my
and
god.
taking the
I love
time
that. Oh,
taking the time to go after the things that I'm really passionate about. So I gave my work 3 months notice because I wanted to finish the project I was on, and it was not like I had to be anywhere. And they appreciated that, and they're like, "We're sad to see you
that
go, but we
is
get it, we get
so
it."
nice of you. 3 months. Dang.
Yeah, it was a hard 3 months too because once I'm doing this, and I didn't want to say to anyone that I was leaving 'cause I don't know, it was a hard 3
Yeah.
months, but when it was finally the last day, it was like, "Okay, now it begins." And I think I went home and, immediately launched Unity and just started
Wow.
building and learning right from then.
You
And that's when I started develop no, actually, I started development on Don't Notice Me a couple months after that, a few
wow.
months after.
So did you have the idea for Don't Notice Me before you put that whole plan into action, or are you just like, I'm just gonna hope for the best and come up with ideas as they come, I suppose?
No, I did not have that plan. I knew I loved making games, and I kinda had a few different ideas. I started one that was just I learned very quickly it was way beyond, scope for a first project with that engine and with
Mm.
3D. Um, it's still a cool project, still might pick it up one day, but I actually started a game jam, and
Oh,
I thought that would be a fun idea for a game jam. I thought, puzzle game. I kind of enjoy playing puzzle games, and adding a narrative element, with a comedic, kind of quirky storyline, I think would be really fun to play and fun to make. And so I started over the jam, and I was like, I'm kind of getting into this idea. I think this could be really fun. And I built it out in a few months, and I put it in front of some friends, and they were like, "This is cool, but I want to know more.
oh my
Why are
gosh.
we in this?" Because you play as you sneak into someone's room to get a love letter back that you don't want your crush to read.
Oh,
So people are like, "Why am I in this room? Whose room is it? How did the letter get in there? How did I get into the room?" So people wanted to see more, and some of the puzzles I got some great feedback on. So I ended up spending what I thought would be only 2 to 3 months. I ended up spending 10 months after multiple iterations, multiple rounds of testing, and then um, it became a more full game than what it was originally going to be.
dang. So it came from a game jam.
Hmm.
Wow, that is so cool. Like I need to do a game jam now. I'm like
You
totally
should.
like taking
You
notes.
definitely should. They're a great way to try it out, right?
Ah, that's amazing. So, and then someone had asked, how long was the Don't Notice Me development time? I think that answer might have been in there. It was a little more than 10 months.
10 months. 10 months.
Oh,
Pretty
okay.
much did on.
And anything you learned from that first kind of game, like things to do or things not to do? And this could be from like marketing to programming.
Hmm. I had a list. I actually
Ooh,
should write that list out. Uh, but the number one, I'll skip to the number one.
oh yay.
Don't do is do not overscope your project.
Ah, okay. Definitely keep
uh,
it in scope. Smaller
yes.
is better.
Um, so keep it in scope. Keep your projects simple. Um, my gosh, what else? Start start small. Finish something. Finish something is a big one. Uh, when I back when I was ages ago, for so long, I've been making little mini projects, whether they're a little game in Flash or they're an app or a website or whatever random project. And I started making one after another. And one of the smallest projects I made was this little Flash game that was like, you can just create a character. I was practicing a style of art and I was practicing learning Flash. So I put them together and you could combine items to make a character. And I finished it because it was not a big project. And I put it on DeviantArt and people got into it. And I was like, oh, this is cool. And they're like, oh, can you add something like this? Could you add that? And I was like, okay, sure. So I spent a little bit more time into it. And then I left it for a while. And eventually one day it just kind of like blew up and I was like, oh my God, this is really cool. So I put it on a website with some ads on the page and it started making like a few $100s a month.
Oh.
And this was like, and this went on for years. And this was so long after I actually made the game or like little creator. And I thought like, oh my God, the one project I actually finished was like the simplest throwaway project I would have guessed. And that is actually super successful. If I had just, in comparison to what it is, if I just finished some of those other projects along the way, like what would they have been by now? Or what could I have made them out to be? So I was like, okay, next could have made the most popular, amazing game. No, I don't think it. I mean, who knows? But they could have been something that I was really proud of after.
Wow.
And so that's why I'm now like, I have to finish projects. That is the very important part. And when you finish a project, you learn that all the things that go into it. Like somebody mentioned on chat the other day, like finish a project and put all the things that you need into it and finish a game. Even if the game is like walk from point A to point B, put in a title screen, put in save and load, put in settings, put in, sound, put in music and sound effects, put in ability to adjust the volume, put in ability to adjust the display, publish it, see how that goes, try marketing, all those different little steps you forget about and you miss. So you might practice making games, but if you don't finish, you don't get to practice finishing games. And that's an important part of it.
I especially love the follow through point. This is, I guess, tangentially related to games, but I almost didn't submit my application for grad school because I was like, I'm not going to get in. I'm not going to like, blah, blah, blah. I had all these self-doubts and then I just was like, whatever, I'm just going to finish it and I'll apply again next year. And then I got in and that led to me getting my internship at Manticore, which led to me going full-time at Manticore, which led to me being right here right now talking to you guys and getting to be on this channel. So I definitely think the power of following through is kind of crazy. And I'm glad you brought it up.
That's a good story. It's a good little story. And I can't believe, go figure, I'll never get in. Oh, I may as well do it. And then, there you go.
I was like shocked. And when I talked to the program director, he's like, oh yeah, he's like, I took a chance on you, but your application, it was very clear you're passionate about games. And I was like, oh my, yeah, I was shocked he even knew who I was. I didn't know that the program director and all of the professors actually go through every application. I thought it was like some faceless council, but yeah, I was like, good thing I did. Cool.
That's amazing.
I did. And then someone in chat asked, yes, with arrhythmia, what does overscope mean, or how would you know if you're overscoping?
That's an excellent question. That is something that I think even AAA studios have a trouble with, which is why you're often seeing massive projects being postponed. But there are things you can do to help figure that out. I think the more games you put out, the better you can predict, especially if you do the same process, the better you can predict how long it will take you to do something. That's why I think starting very, very small will give you an idea, and then slowly growing, slowly adding something to the first game or making a second game that's slightly bigger is a good way to do that. And another great thing to do is like join a community. You guys at Core have created a great community with your Discord, and there's plenty on Twitch and in person and online that you can present your idea to somebody if you meet them or in a public whatever, in a chat or in a Discord message, and just say, hey, this is my background. I'm looking to make a shooter where this and like you can just kind of describe it without saying too much if you don't want to, and just get some feedback. Like, is this a good place to start, or where would you guys start? And you might get some really valuable feedback from that. so you can learn
Yeah.
from others' experiences.
I think it is
Yeah.
kind of personal because it depends on your own, I guess, knowledge base. Like for me, I think the first project before the light bulb project was actually I just wanted to make Christmas lights that turned on and like blinked and like went in succession, and that ended up being like crazy complicated. So I did the just turning on the one light bulb. So for me, Christmas lights was overscoped, but that may not be
Yeah.
overscoped for someone else. And
Yeah, it's funny how quickly it can become complicated.
yeah. And Blue Clary says, shout out to the core Discord community. Thanks, Clary. And by the way, I am loving your followers in chat here. It is very evident you guys have a lot of like
Hi,
fun and
guys.
inside jokes. Thank you so much for joining us.
Look how cool they are. They're so cool. Look at
They
them.
are really cool. Why is Lana Lux not a VIP here? Sorry.
Wow,
You definitely
Kajan.
should be asking the important questions. And then someone did want to ask if your favorite animal was a tapir, and if not, why not? And I feel like that might also be an inside joke.
Well, that was a question by King Tapir, and I would say my favorite animal tapir is probably every animal except a tapir. And I'm
Get
kidding.
the feeling
I'm kidding.
maybe you've asked that
Tapirs
one
are okay.
before.
Tapirs are okay. They're okay. They're growing on me. You know, all the screenshots of tapirs or photos of tapirs, I should say. You know, they're growing on me a little bit. I wasn't sure at first, but you know, they're okay.
And then Cons, who is one of our wonderful core creators, asked how many people worked on the game, and this was in reference to Don't Notice Me. I see you even got voice actors. So you solo dev most things, and I think for that one you said you had voice actors, and is that it?
Music. So voice acting and music I had help with.
So guys, if you're just tuning in and you're unfamiliar with Lana, she is an amazing solo dev. She does the art and the programming. She's the whole package. And she has put out Don't Notice Me, and then she's currently working on Strain, which you can watch on her channel, which is in her little description over there, twitch.tv/Lana_Lux.
Thanks, Tasha.
Oh, yeah, of course. And let's see. I actually wanted to circle back to an answer you had earlier where you're talking about like people suggesting things in game or for you to put in your game. How do you take suggestions from chat? Because I'm sure while you're streaming, people have many different suggestions of how you should be doing things. How do you decide what you actually want to include?
I actually don't make any decisions myself. I just ask chat and they tell me what to do, and they're pretty much the ones in charge, to be honest. The silence following.
I was like, really? Democratization
Sometimes I
of
do.
games.
Sometimes if I'm stuck on something, chat will help me out with a poll, and I can always count on chat if I need a suggestion for something like specific. Can always count on chat when I ask a specific question to give a very non-serious answer. So I can always chat. I can always count on chat for that.
Okay.
If I say type 0 for this, if you prefer this, type 1 if you prefer that, it will always be every other number as well.
Oh boy. Okay. Yeah. And I see chat is like popping off after that question. I love it.
To give you a more thorough answer, I do have a vision in mind with the game as I'm making it, and chat is, in reality, like very cool. They often come up with really cool ideas or many suggestions that can turn into something cool. And a lot of the time, I'll try stuff. It can be challenging because you do get constant feedback, including feedback when you're not finished something, or feedback when you're not planning to rework something, and that's still useful because maybe you missed it, and maybe it is worth going back and looking at it. But it can be sometimes overwhelming. So sometimes I just tune out feedback for a little while and just focus on getting something done, and then. But like most people are really cool. Like very rarely do I get feedback when it's not asked for, or feedback when it's not time for that feedback back. Like if I'm working on a face and I'm like, oh, I don't know with the proportions, people will be like, oh, maybe the eye should be lower or something. But if I'm in the middle of just making something, rarely do people come and be like, that looks like garbage. Like you should totally change that thing. Like people are pretty considerate, so
Oh, good.
it's not too bad.
Yeah. In my studies, I'm originally, before I started studying game design, I was always scared to share my ideas because I was like, you always are, or at least I am always constantly thinking of game ideas, and I get attached to a few, and you're like, they feel very precious to me, and I'm like, I don't want to tell anyone about them because I think people will like, I don't know, they'll be like, oh, this is the best game idea ever, and I'm going to do it myself. In reality, everyone else has their own game ideas that they're holding precious to them, and feedback is a gift. So for me, I was actually like, as soon as I started sharing my ideas, I realized that no one's going to steal them, and you actually get people excited about your ideas, and then they'll start like making suggestions that potentially make your game even better, which is incredible. But then there's also the double-edged, or maybe the third edge, I don't know, some metaphor here, where you can get overwhelmed with feedback. So that is very interesting. But it sounds like that is helpful when they need to be.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, and that's a good point. That is a good point, that sharing your idea with people can help get feedback on it in a big pool of people rather than just one-on-one with each person.
Yeah. And then I'm going to move on to talking about your experiences in core. So you clearly have a lot of experience in Unity. I can't believe that was like the first engine you decided to jump into, because there's a little bit of a learning curve. And I also like that you didn't take any time off from like job to streaming job. When I quit my job, like before Manticore, I was definitely like, oh, I'm going to work on like game design studies and whatnot. And it did not go that way. I took a little break, and it's kind of dangerous to take a break. And I love that you did not miss a beat. You're pretty fearless. So
yeah, I think, I was ready, I was right.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, you had 3 months of knowing you were going to end it. So I guess the entire time you were just kind of ready to jump in. And I guess, you seem very inspired. You seem like you're doing exactly what you should be, quite honestly, from a completely objective third-party opinion. So what was it like learning core? And you can give me like honest feedback as well. I know you're on Core Live, and I am the host of Core Live, but we are still in open alpha, and feedback, especially from experienced game devs like yourself, is incredibly helpful to us to know what we need to change or fix or implement or optimize.
Well, the first time, like I did a little bit of poking around in Core before the first stream that we did, but I wanted to explore it for the first time on stream with chat, because I thought that would be a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
So those of you who joined in that day were around, and we built out a castle scene, and I basically just looked at the different assets that were available, and it was so fun. It was like, I felt like a playground. You guys in the description is digital playground. That is such an accurate description of it. It was just really fun. The level building, seeing what assets are there, seeing what was in the community created assets. And then the next stream was the trap creation stream. That was a little bit more of a learning curve, because I hadn't used Lua before, and I was not very familiar with how Core was put together.
Mm-hmm.
I did the tutorials, and I started to dig in, and there was definitely some there was like a little bit of a, you had to I had to do trial and error. I had to figure stuff out, but it wasn't too bad. I'm surprised within a couple of days I managed to get a few different traps made, and it was really satisfying to get that working, like getting arrows shooting across that would take damage and start over. And it was also really rewarding to have basically because you start off with all these different assets and a multiplayer and all these things available for you to use, it felt cool to create something interactive within that because it's like I have all these things available and I can now add to it. So I think a little goes a long way learning it, but I still have a lot to learn. So I'm
Oh,
just
me
barely
as well,
scratching the
to
surface.
be honest.
Yeah.
So how did you approach like learning a new programming language? Because it sounds like you didn't have much experience with Lua beforehand.
That's right. I follow the tutorials that Core offers. I didn't do all of them though, actually. I should have done all of them. That probably would have made it a little easier. Um, and that gave me like even just doing a few of them. That's the thing with game development. Like you can just spend a couple days doing tutorials, and there's usually enough information to just build something super simple, try and fail, and keep like learning and trying new things and creating things. Did that answer the question? What was the question?
Oh yeah, how did you approach learning a new language? And so you're completely self-taught in everything?
And yeah,
Art?
I
Oh,
just
I'm like everything in life. No, I specifically
everything
like
in life. Yeah.
programming
I just
and modeling.
fail until I don't. With game development, yes, yeah, I'm
Oh
self-taught
my
with.
god, that is I as someone who tried to do it on their own and then was like, I'm just gonna spend a lot of money on school so I don't have to do that. That is just incredibly impressive. Uh, how did you learn programming or art first?
I had a bit of background in both, but pretty unrelated. Like I've always done art, 2D art, and
Hmm.
enjoyed it and spent a lot of time learning it. And I learned web development and spent, years doing that. But I learned C# and Unity and 3D modeling all at once, and it was very overwhelming. I don't know if I'd recommend doing it all at once. It's like it's just you have to take in so much information, and teaching yourself does mean a lot of trial and error and not knowing exactly what information you need to know next. Um, so I think I took like the long way around with some things and came back and was like, oh, I should have done it this way, and oh, that's a very simple thing I could have done, and instead I learned this other complicated thing. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm flattered that you think it's cool, but it comes with a little bit of frustration.
Ah,
But I mean,
okay.
hey, maybe it sticks better when you learn it through that way.
Yeah, I think I mean everyone has a different learning style and now that you mention it, you kind of had a winding path. I almost wonder I don't think anyone really truly has like a very like linear experience because I think we all kind of hop around based on what our interests are. So if you're like, oh, I want to make like a puzzler, I think what I'm trying to say is I think everyone might have a winding experience and that might be normal, but I don't know enough about everyone else's game dev experiences to speak for them.
I think
Um,
one thing that might have contributed to the winding path that a lot of people seem to have is that, um, you know, years ago, game development was a very small industry, and you had to do things in a very complicated and technical way that I don't know if everybody looked at that and said, "Oh, yeah, that's my dream job," right?
mhm.
It was only later when things became a little more accessible and 3D software wasn't, $4,000 before you could even open it. Uh, so and there was no schooling to learn these things. Like, this is a pretty new industry, so unless you're relatively new to it, I think it's very easy and very possible that you took a few different paths before you arrived here.
Hmm. Hmm. And then
It's
I
possible.
saw a question in chat that I thought was really interesting. This is from Sirota Cyclist. Did notice Lana is excellent balancing very difficult dev stuff while interacting with chat. Thoughts on how she does this? How do you do it all?
Uh, Thank you very much. Um, I would say it wasn't always like that. It's something that, I got used to, and it's it's not too bad because you guys probably have noticed that when I'm coding something, and I'm really focused or doing art or any task, and I get focused, I don't read chat for a little bit because I'm just so preoccupied. It's only when I stop because I want to take like a quick short break from whatever I'm doing, then I'll look over, check messages, catch up on things. And often, especially with like coding, I'll be like, oh, why is that happening? Why is that happening? I'll try to fix it and like, oh, it was that thing. And I'll check back on chat. No, they're all saying like, oh, you forgot this thing.
Oh no.
So I don't always balance it that well, but there's like a stop this train of thought and start that train of thought that I can switch back and forth between, rather than if I was in a room with somebody speaking, you're not really in control of when this flow of coding or art stops and ends. So it's actually not too bad with written chat.
Ah, okay. And then someone else, this was from Steve. He asked, no, it wasn't from Steve, sorry. This was from Project Aroid. How do you approach developing in Core versus Unity? Which I am also very interested in hearing about.
Oh, that's a good one. I feel like I'm not familiar enough with Core to have like a set approach yet. But I think that they both are very different tools. And I would say Unity would be, if I want something, especially if I wanted to have a specific art style, Unity would be the way to go. But Core, you can do things quickly in because there's so much that comes with it, specifically multiplayer. So I think it will be a really great tool to build out games, even if they're a prototype, see how they go. I could build it out really quickly in Core, push it out, and then if I like that, I could build one in Unity with a different art style, or I could, I don't know. I think Core is like a good testing ground for a lot of things. And it's fun to just try out multiplayer because I don't even know where I would begin with Unity for multiplayer. So it's fun to experiment with that and explore what multiplayer looks like.
Yeah. During school, they were teaching us how to do multiplayer. And I was like, we could just use Core, but we spent like weeks learning how to like implement multiplayer in Unity.
Oh, wow.
I do have a little experience in Unity, obviously not as much as I do have in Core. I think the main difference that I noticed between them is just that Core is an enclosed creation system, which can be, for better or for worse. It is nice because you never have to leave it and you don't have to really worry about like learning Blender, whereas with Unity you can import anything, which is cool, but there is more things in the pipeline that you will have to learn. And any features you would like to see added to Core that you're kind of like, while you were messing around with it, I wish they had this?
I'm sure you get this a lot, but Mac support would be really cool. I
Oh,
use
what?
my Mac support for
Oh,
Apple.
yes.
I use my laptop. Like when I'm kind of winding down, I go hang out on my bed and I use my laptop. And that would be a great time to use Core because I can just like leisurely make a level, play a game. So I'm always like, I'll go use some Core on my laptop. Like, oh wait, not for Macs yet. So I'm looking forward to that coming out. Other things. Oh, there is one feature I would love, and that is Control D to duplicate, because I do that all day in Maya. I do it in Unity. I do it in Substance Painter. Does that one? I don't know. I just feel like Control D I'm using constantly all day, and I keep in Core. I keep going Control D. Why it's not happening? Oh yeah, Control C, Control V, but Control D would be like really nice to have.
We do have Control W, which does the same thing. If that
Oh,
helps
what do
you
you
out.
know? I think it might, but it's like that
Yeah.
reflex that
You've learned Control D now.
yeah.
Maybe remapping editor shortcuts. I think we've gotten that request a bit.
Oh yeah.
Awesome. And then we're actually coming up on our hour here. Do you have any last
Oh wow.
thoughts you'd like to add, or projects you'd like to plug?
I've been working on Strain since March, and it's a survival game, as I mentioned, survival narrative RPG style. So I've been working on that, and it's slowly getting towards the early access. Those are some old screenshots that we took back in March, actually. So it's evolved quite a bit since then, but yeah, that's the main thing, that and the stream that I do every day.
That is so awesome. So early access. Will it be available for all of your followers? How do we get early access?
Um,
I
it
want to
will
pay
be
people in
publicly
toilet paper.
available.
Yes. Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on and kind of sharing all of your thoughts on all of the varied questions I asked you. This is it's been a joy to see you working in core, and thank you for bringing over all of your followers here and during your raids. And thank you guys for tuning in. Any last thoughts from you guys? Let me know now, because we're gonna sign off. And then Lana, you good to go? I'm good to
Yes,
go.
thank you very much for having me.
Awesome. Okay.
It's been nice chatting. And
Oh.
Corsi, the character, was the keeper. Thank you guys from chat for joining in today, and thank you, Tasha, for having me
All
in
right.
core.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
Bye.